Let me know when. Fabulous. So today is August 2nd, and we are with the Consortium of Cities. Thank you, Town of Netherland and staff, I'm sure helped with the setup. This is fantastic. Again, for our recording, my name is Martha Loachman, Boulder County Commissioner, and we've got some folks in the room. So as always, we do introductions, and we'll maybe do on the line first, and then we'll do in person as far as introductions go. So your name and then your title, and certainly give us a relationship to which town or city that you represent so that we know who's in the room, who's participating in the conversation. And then we'll go through what our agenda is and give anybody an opportunity if there's an item that we missed that was not listed on the agenda. Based on time this evening, we will make sure that we finish right before 8:30. We typically take a break. So just in anticipation, if anybody has other things they need to address in the middle, we will have a little break. So with that, let's go online, and I will get someone's assistance that can see that screen. And meanwhile, I'll try and get connected to my computer to be able to be more helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I'll call on people as we go. Ari.
Hi, I'm Ari Harrison, a trustee with the Town of Erie.
Sean.
Hi, I'm Sean McCoy, City Councilman at Large, Town of Longmont, or City of Longmont.
Justin.
Justin Brooks, Mayor, Town of Erie.
Holly.
Holly Rogan, Mayor, Town of Lyons.
Ken.
I'm Ken Lenarsic. I'm pinch hitting for Mayor Box in Jamestown.
Sandy.
Hi, Sandy Hammerly, trustee, Town of Superior.
Rachel.
Rachel King, Deputy Director for Economic Vitality and Development with City and County of Brookfield.
And Devin.
Devin Schaff, council member with the City and County of Brimfield.
There you go.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for joining us online, and we'll try and pay attention. So if there's other folks that maybe enter in during the meeting, we'll give them a chance as well to introduce themselves. So how about in the room? And I'll start maybe to my right here in introductions. Thanks.
Miranda Fisher, Town Administrator, Town of Netherland.
MJ Adams, Affordable Housing Manager, Town of Erie.
Bill Cole, Housing Partnership and Policy Manager with the Boulder County Housing and Human Services Department.
And Bill, you were just up here a month ago, right?
Yes, I was up here a few weeks ago for the Peak to Peak meeting.
That's great.
Yep.
Tom Mahold, Mayor Pro Tem Netherland.
Lauren Folkerts, Boulder City Council.
And Mark, good evening, everyone. Mark Rosen, Boulder County Commissioner's Office staff.
Great. Thank you all. Appreciate everybody being here and participating this evening. So for those of us in the room, the agenda was neatly and organizedly put on our tables here. So we appreciate that. And I want to say, I think Erie, maybe you're the shout out for the furthest distance to join us tonight in person. So thank you for that. So here's our agenda. We've got Regional Housing Partnership, an update on that. And then we're going to hear a little bit around Proposition 123, updates in that direction. As always, we'll have an opportunity for questions and just dialogue. For those of you on the chat, of course, please do use that to connect with each other and questions that you might have as well. And we'll try and keep our eye on anyone that puts their hand up, either in a true motion if you're able, and otherwise with that little button that will give us a signal as well. The fourth item on the agenda is state 2024 state legislation and the discussion around affordable housing. And then we'll have an update on regional minimum wage. And so before we finish that, is there any other items that folks were anticipating or hoping to put on the agenda if time permits this evening?
It looks like housing is the main focus, and I think we're going to burn it up tonight.
Great. I'm not going to argue with that. Okay, good. Well, then without any indications of anybody wanting to add anything, we won't add more to that agenda, and we'll do our best to get through it. We will have an opportunity for community announcements, and if we don't have the time from the schedule, folks in the chat, please do put those in there, and as staff will update with any websites or specific dates and times for invitations for different events. So we appreciate that. So with that, let's move into our regional housing partnership. We've got an update on plan implementation. And really the question was around the goals of the regional housing partnership, the specific items that are on there were kind of the strategies in there. So Bill Cole, thank you for joining us.
You're very welcome. I wanted to give a little bit of overview on the housing partnership. Because I've been here since the end of December, and I find it helpful to kind of provide some context about what the housing partnership does. So the Boulder County Regional Housing Partnership coordinates the preservation and development of affordable housing with municipalities throughout the county. And we do that by sharing of information and best practices and advocating for affordable housing projects and supporting municipal programs, including home ownership and home rehabilitation, fostering those partnerships and developing affordable housing policies to be used by the county and hopefully municipalities within the county. We currently have two committees, the Executive Steering Committee, which is comprised of staff from Boulder County, the City of Boulder, the Town of Erie, the City of Lafayette, the City of Longmont, and the City of Louisville. And that is expanding. We're trying to bring more people in so more voices are heard, especially from the small jurisdictions, because we want to hear what's happening there and we want to be able to address those needs. The second is the Advisory Committee, which is that above list I just mentioned, plus any and all other municipalities in the county, and then really any organization that works on affordable housing in the county. Yesterday at the quarterly meeting, we had Habitat there for the first time, and it was good to have them there and hear from them as well. So it's just really bringing everybody together that we can. We are not a formal body. We're not a council or a board. We are just staff in the different municipalities in the county working together. We do have some county funds. Thank you, Commissioner Lutchman, for those from ARPA to help us do some of this work that we're going on. But we don't have like development funds. We aren't, the organization itself is not in the business of developing housing. We're really supporting the development of housing in other places that are doing it. That makes sense. Staff have been collaborating in this way since 2016. And as I said, we support the development and advocate for affordable housing across the jurisdictions. And we really try to leverage the expertise and use that across the jurisdictions for one, and one instance of that is using the ARPA funds. Boulder County has a really good program around home ownership and rental compliance. And so we are providing additional funds to them to hire more staff so that they can work with municipalities that don't have that program to help them with that. And that will hopefully be an ongoing program into the future. Another one that we're looking at is the City of Longmont has a really good rehabilitation program. Also looking at how we can expand that across the county so that other jurisdictions don't have to reinvent the wheel because we've already got people doing it. And as I mentioned before, we are trying to look at developing policies and model ordinances that we can share across the county. One of the things that they did in the past was the inclusionary housing ordinances that they helped develop. We're possibly looking at mobile home park ordinances and zoning around that. So really talking about, both affordable housing, deed restricted, and naturally occurring affordable housing. And I also want to mention and plug that we are having a housing summit. We are planning that. And the date is November 14th. It'll be starting at around 9 o'clock and going till about 4. And it's going to be at the Boulder JCC. And I just want to let people know that we're working on a hold the date and we'll get it out formally, but I just want to let people know that. So when it comes to this question on the agenda about what strategies are you implementing, we talked about inclusionary housing, the policies, really talking and supporting each other in the development. One of the things we're looking at, we can talk about this more with Prop 123, is jurisdictions are doing their letters of commitment, opting in, and we really want to coordinate across jurisdictions so we're not stepping on each other, we're not overlapping, so that we can really maximize the dollars that come into the county. Other organizations in the county have done this with other funding from the state, And when the state sees how well we coordinate at the county level, they respond to that positively. And so that is part of our thinking about how we're going to deal with Prop 123, is really work together across the jurisdictions on that. So I mentioned inclusionary housing. I know some jurisdictions have fee in lieu for developments. I know that a lot of jurisdictions are working on ADUs and updating that. And they're also updating housing plans. I know that Lafayette just finished updating theirs. Longmont is working on theirs. Louisville is starting to work on theirs as well. So it's really updating those plans as well.
Did you want to wait till the end, or can I ask a question on that statement?
Go for it.
Is there a lot of commonality in strategies they're coming up with across these towns for their ADU strategies?
Not that I have seen. I mean, I know that like right now, Lafayette is looking at that. Right now, ADUs are allowed in the historical downtown area, and they're looking at expanding that across the jurisdiction. Louisville, as part of the Marshall Fire conversations, have been talking about that. So they're looking how to do that as well as a result of the Marshall fires. And then I know Longmont's revisiting that, and you all probably know this better than I do, but I know that Longmont's also looking at that as they're updating their plans and their zoning. But I don't know that I could say that there's commonality at this point. I mean, I don't really even know much about Boulder's ADU, but I know they have a pretty robust program. So I haven't done that kind of look.
And we're also looking at our ADU regulations right now and relaxing them significantly to allow more throughout the city.
So sharing that information across jurisdictions might be helpful. And that's part of what we can do.
That's why we're here.
Yep, right, exactly. So as you know, the countywide goal is to have 12% affordable homes by 2035, which would be approximately 18,000 units. We are working towards that. The city of Boulder is at 8.3%, and they have a city goal of 15%. So they're being assertive with that. Longmont's at 6.3%. And unincorporated Boulder County is at 2.8, which sounds really low compared to the other guys, but all of those numbers are up from the time that commitment was made in 2017. All the numbers have risen. As you know, there are a lot of things that have occurred and are occurring, such as Willoughby Corner and Lafayette, 400 additional units that'll be coming online. BCHA has added 99 new units since 2017. Sure. Oh,
Ari, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, just real quickly, I mean, you talked about unincorporated Boulder County, and I wanted to kind of get a little bit more clarity in terms of what that encompasses as far as where that data comes from, because obviously half of Erie, or at least where I'm at, is in unincorporated Boulder County. So I wanted to kind of get a little perspective. Do you have data from Erie in regard to any of that information?
I do not. We're just, when we talk about unincorporated Boulder County, it's everything outside the municipal boundaries.
Okay.
All right. That's what I'm talking about.
Yep, which obviously where we are. So, but obviously we straddle two different counties. So I just wanted to clarify. So if there's any data that we need to do, we'll try to figure that out if you need that.
Okay. Well, MJ's sitting right next to me, so I'll talk with her.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So in the pipeline, I just want to also mention this. I mean, talking about progress. As I mentioned, Willoughby Corner in Lafayette is adding 400 units. The city of Boulder has 1,464 units in the pipeline, and the city of Longmont have another 512 in the pipeline, and that's looking out several years. So there's a lot of activity. It is a stretch to reach that 12%, but we're doing what we can to get there.
Are the ones that are being built, the three projects you mentioned, public, private, or who's building them?
Willoughby Corner is being built by Boulder County Housing Authority. So that is public. The other ones, Boulder and Longmont, I can't answer. I'm not sure. They just gave me the numbers. They didn't give me the specifics on the project. So again, people in this meeting might probably know better than I do.
And then you define affordable. I imagine it changes quite a bit from community to community.
So there's two pieces to affordability. The first piece is, and this is a HUD standard, is that no more than 30% of a household income goes towards housing costs. So that includes mortgage and rent, mortgage or rent, plus utilities, things like that. So that is considered affordable if it's 30% or under. Over 30% is considered not affordable. And then you also have the other factor, which is the AMIs, the area median incomes. And those are also defined by HUD. Low income is 30% or extreme. I'm not going to get it right, but 30% very extremely low income, 50% low extreme, 60% is low income, and 80%, 60% are low income. And then, yeah, I don't remember the exact terms, but it goes 30, 60, 30, 50, 60, 80. Middle income is considered 80 to 120. And those are defined by HUD. So there's two pieces to the affordability, if you will.
I would imagine it's, well, they do it for the county when they look at the AGI. Okay.
There's a question online from Councilmember McCoy and Trustee Harrison. I apologize. I used your first name. Excuse me.
So I got a report back from Molly O'Donnell, our housing division director, and she went through and answered all the questions that were given by Mark. And some of the things that really jumped out at me is that we're in the progress being made. Where is progress being made? And we have 2,696 deed restricted affordable units in Longmont as of the end of 2022. Half of our goal of having 5,400 units by 2035. So that's just one factor of what we're achieving here in Longmont. But we as a city council took over the Longmont Housing Authority. And we have some developments that are private-public partnerships that are in the mix right now and working very hard towards the goal of that 12% that Molly, that we talked about earlier there. So just wanted to add that to your conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me. And I'm happy to stop there, but also participate in the conversation around these bullets. I mean, I'd be interested to hear the strategies and progress people have to talk about, but I'm also happy to be part of that conversation as well.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for being here and for information as well. And for offering to be part of the conversation. I'm sure there's more questions. So I think the curiosity I have is if there's other folks, and Councilmember McCoy, it sounded like you had more information that you might want to share. And if folks have reached out to Mark, I apologize. We haven't spent any time today. It's been nonstop today, so we haven't gotten a chance to just touch base. So if there's folks that brought specific presentations and or just responses to those questions, this would be a great time to hear from jurisdictions. And no pressure. If you do not have information, don't get online and start trying to figure it out. That's okay. That's why we're here. So maybe we'll start with Councilmember McCoy, just because you had started already.
Let me just get it's up here. I was just going to forward this to Mark real quick here. So maybe he could pull it up on your screen there.
That'd be great. And then Trustee Harrison, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the questions you've got online or in the chat.
Sure. A little echo, so hopefully. All right, there we go. That's better. So the question in regard to what I'm talking about is specific to, we all know that property values have gone up, and property values and taxes are part of everyone's mortgage. And so that, even though I may have a fixed mortgage of 2.5%, my taxes are still going up. So is the cost of, when you're looking at affordability of that 30%, are you taking into account that those drastic rises in taxes that make up that mortgage? Is that part of it?
Yeah, that would be part of the cost, yes.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that for Erie, what we've talked about in our meetings have been, well, it's great that maybe somebody might be able to get into a home, but the ability to keep them in the home because of the property taxes going through the roof. And I think there's been news reports out there that they've talked about, other counties that have, I think 75% or so people who have tried to contest their property values have lost. And then you hear about one in Castilla where their property values went through the roof 50% in 1 year. And then when they went to go and protest it, for whatever reason, that particular board, they dropped it back from the stratosphere down and halved it, but didn't have any measurement around why they were able to drop that. So those are things I think from questions from people that might come into play somewhere down the road. There's a lot more clarity around that, those sort of things when it comes to property taxes.
Thank you. All right, Councilmember McCoy, let's hear from you in regards to your bullet points there on the question.
Okay, it was just interesting before that. I was approached in the parking lot at King Supers today by somebody collecting signatures to lock all property taxes at 4%. So there is some sort of group out there trying to achieve that. So that's something to put on all of our radars. But you can, I don't know if Mark is able to pull this up, but it's, some of the strategies that we are implementing. We're going after that 12% inclusionary housing ordinance that was brought up there. We have a fee in lieu program. We have development standards incentives, increasing height, density, bonus, and other things like that. We have a fee waiver to offset some programs. As we go down here, where's progress? I pointed that out earlier. As we look at where the barriers being encountered, construction defect laws affecting all attached for sale products. And that's the one thing that is really frustrating here, because we've got a lot of people that would like to get into the home ownership possibility, and that construction defects issue seems to just keep cropping up. Some other things were Molly went through and wrote up all kinds of stuff. I don't want to get too redundant here. If people want to, if Mark wants to forward this, she's answered all these questions, which in quite detail, that would probably be good for any community to kind of look at, and then they'd have a contact person with the city of Longmont to reach out and ask questions of. So I don't want to go too redundant there, but you can see those there, and they're just kind of answering each one of the questions. But I think that obviously, we've done a lot of that work for our community, and I don't think that there's any exclusivity that couldn't be shared with other communities to make those same things happen. She's just absolutely brilliant when it comes to this. She can certainly teach a master's class on all this issue around affordable housing. She just seems to really be tuned into and the needs and all the little nuances of it. Just remarkable. Don't try to steal her away, people. She's really great.
I just heard a
But-
great idea.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Yeah.
Any questions in regards to Longmont? Otherwise, it sounds like that list will just get emailed out for folks who might want to reference it. Great. And if folks have questions, they can put it in the chat as well, and I'll try and watch that as well. Other jurisdictions that want to share their responses to those questions in regards to the Regional Housing Partnership Boulder?
I'm going to also go through these somewhat quickly just because I'm sure a lot of it's redundant, but as was mentioned, Boulder, since Boulder's been able to get 3,940 permanently affordable units, and we are about halfway to our 15% goal. We average about 126 new affordable units per year. Which to me, I mean, it's great. It's a great number, but it's also a little bit concerning to me, right? Because at that rate, we actually won't hit our 2035 goal. But I think we have some bigger projects that are currently just about to break free. We've prioritized this goal through ADUs, inclusionary, well, there's some council priorities right now that are also looking to prioritize this goal through diversifying home ownership types and increasing the number of units in the city. So not just looking at the permanently affordable side, but also the market rate side. And so like we mentioned, we're looking at ADUs, zoning for affordable housing, middle income down payment programs, occupancy reform, and also making some adjustments to our inclusionary housing or our cash in lieu program to try and make sure that we're creating sort of the best set of incentives that we can. Are we just doing bullet number one, or should I go through some of the other response? Okay.
I would go through all of them.
We're also really excited about we're forming a regional technical assistance program along with the county. So this program will provide compliance services for any participating community in the county and their respective housing initiatives. It will be operated by City of Boulder staff with funding from the county. Compliance services will range from managing the purchase and selling of units in the programs, federal and state compliance for rental units, and other compliance needs to ensure that units remain in the affordable program. Our upcoming IGA looks like it's planning to include Erie, Louisville, Lafayette, and Boulder County Housing Authority. It's like that, had no idea that we were working on that, but it was exciting. Let's see. And then also just to touch on barriers, I think similarly, you know, I've heard of the condo defects law comes up all the time, particularly on the market rate side. We have in our community a large number of projects that are shovel ready. We have 1,500 units in the pipeline, but funding is really, you know, always the issue. So funding, along with ongoing challenges related to community opposition to affordable housing in people's backyards or neighborhoods. In some of our council work, the limitations around housing density that are part of our Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan have also come up recently. And yeah, that's my shortened version. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Boulder?
I've got one.
Okay.
Where are you, what, with the ones that are in the pipeline now, where are you building? I don't think Boulder's having many more buildable places.
Yeah, so I believe a lot of the units that I haven't looked exactly through them, but typically are larger scale affordable housing projects tend to be redevelopments and multifamily. So spread throughout the downtown area where we allow denser housing typically.
Any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate that update. I was not familiar with that item that you talked about, so I'm going to follow up with you. Who else has some responses to the questions that were sent out in regards to the regional housing partnership?
I do. I actually have some slides to share because I was an overachiever today,
Yay.
as Mark will attest. So I'm going to go ahead and do that if that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, everybody see it?
We do.
Great. So I was really excited about tonight's meeting because the town of Lyons has made some incredible strides just in the past 2 years. I checked my files to look for a PowerPoint presentation, and it was exactly 2 years ago today, I think, that I gave my first presentation to the consortium. So in terms of the goals, we finished our 2023 comp plan, and affordable housing is a key aspiration for the community. So we have community support. We received a DOLA IHOP grant for a housing study, and that is in process now. Our planning commission is studying our current short-term rental and long-term rental ordinances so that we can broaden affordability. We keep a pretty tight rein on short-term rentals because we want to be able to keep people in town and not have, not become a tourist town that's full of short-term rentals. So we're looking at a lot of zoning regulations, and a lot of this is new for the town of Lyons. This is nothing previous boards have wanted to consider. So we're looking at by right detached ADUs, expanding the zoning districts for ADUs. And so about 2/3 of our town is governed by HOAs. And so it's tough. And I'm hearing rumors that there may be something in the legislature that loosens what HOAs can rule on. So hopefully we can get some movement there. So we're looking at decreasing minimum lot sizes, parking requirements, and then altering our water share acquisition fee structure. So right now, if you want to build a market rate house in Lyons, you have to put up $70,000 for a water share to Longmont. If you want to build an affordable unit, it's about $14,000. And that's Lake McIntosh versus Colorado Big Thompson water shares. So we're taking a look at, are there different kinds of housing types beyond market rate and affordable? And how can we incentivize those by reducing water share fees? So, I skipped one. So we've made some progress. This is what I'm so excited to show you guys. What you're seeing is our Summit Affordable Housing. Now, the town of Lyons has about 950 rooftops before this. This adds 46 units. And it's for 60 to 80% AMI. People have just started moving in. One of the residents came and knocked on my door in tears because he was about to be homeless, and he got into one of these beautiful homes. They're 3-bedroom, 2-bath with a garage, single family homes, and 3-bedroom, 2-bath multifamily homes, which you can see on the bottom there are just under construction now. They should all be finished within the next couple months, and everybody should be all moved in. In order to make this happen, it took 3 boards and 3 mayors. And the town waived every single fee we could possibly waive. We gave them discounted water shares, and we contributed at least $150,000 in ARPA funds to make this happen. This is adjacent to the neighborhood that is most resistant to affordable housing. So the homes that go for over $1 million, and they have the best views in town. I would love anybody who wants to come up and take a look at them. Would love to show you around. They're absolutely gorgeous. But what we learned in this process was that what we really need now are 1-bedroom units. These are all 3-bedroom, 2-bath. The other thing we did that was innovative in this was, we lost over 130 dwelling units in the 2013 flood. Many people just moved away and gave up. But what this developer, which is Summit Housing, agreed to do was give first priority and first right of refusal to people who were displaced during the flood. The first day that applications opened, we had 80 applications for these 46 units. So the first priority is folks who were displaced during the flood. The second priority is people who already live or work in Lyons. And then the third priority is everybody else. And Summit, so Lyons doesn't have a housing authority, obviously. We have a $2 million general fund. So Summit Development is working with their property management company to make all this happen. So I consider this a huge win. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was this public-private partnership for one small project. So what you're seeing here, I took this picture today. This is 317 Evans Street, right in downtown Lyons. It's 2 single-family lots, so the zone single family. It began its life as 2 different homes, and then it was joined at one point to make an assisted living facility. That went out of business. And then the owners just started putting up walls randomly and making apartments. There were apartments in here that had no windows, no means of egress. It was extremely unsafe. And so the owners decided to sell it because they couldn't redevelop it, just too expensive to bring it up to code. So it was listed for sale last fall, and it was nerve-wracking because what we didn't want was for someone to come and buy it and turn it into $2 million homes. Luckily, what we got was a resident who said, I want to make affordable housing here. So he and his partner purchased this. They're creating small A affordable housing. And I say that because it is guaranteed for 10 years. So it's not in perpetuity affordable housing, but they agreed to not raise the rent. The units go for under $1,000 a month. So they're in the process right now of mitigating all the asbestos. They're going to clear the lot. And then what you see here are the models of the modular housing that they're going to put up there. So 9 apartments in total. They're not displacing any residents. They're actually paying for people to live in apartments in Longmont until this is done in 2 months. So what the town did to help this along was we gave them the discounted water shares, and we did some creative PUDR rezoning so that there's a PUD over this and it can now be denser and multifamily. So when it comes to the barriers, our zoning codes, we're in our own way. R1 predominates in the town in places that aren't HOAs, so we're looking at that. Residents don't want densification. People are always going to complain. And we're focusing a lot on rental housing. We want to look at where we can do deed restricted affordable housing, but Lyons really is constrained when it comes to building. So we're starting to look out east. We registered for the DOLA technical assistance for Prop 123, and we're waiting for that prior to applying. I'm super proud about this. We have a town staff of a total of 18 people, including the folks who take care of our parks. So it's been a huge lift to get this accomplished, and we're really looking forward to doing more as soon as we can.
Thank you, Mayor. That's amazing. There's so many pieces in there. So appreciate that. Exactly. I was looking for the icon and I didn't see it in this format. Mark, what did you do? Questions for the mayor?
I just had one and I put it in the chat, but it was really to the mayor. Number one, great job on trying to do that with the staff you have. And with the neighbors and the residents that are in their $1 million homes, my question was more about the AMI for those who qualify for those homes. Can you do you have information in terms of what that salary range is for people so that they can wrap their heads around it? Because in Erie, we've had that conversation, as the mayor and MJ know all too well, that disconnect between what they think affordable housing is historically for them versus really what we're talking about when it comes to the salaries of those individuals or families that might be taking up residence in those housing.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's 60 to 80% AMI, and what that translates to at the low end is about $44,000. And so what I like to tell people is that our state legislators make $44,000 a year and qualify for our affordable housing.
That makes sense. What's their reaction to that?
Shock. You know, for a little bit of history, in 2015, there was a ballot measure in the town of Lyons to build affordable housing on some of our park and open space property. We have a lot of it, and we just wanted 5 acres. So anytime there's a zoning change in parks and open space, it goes to a vote of the town, and the town voted it down. And most of the opponents came from the neighborhood where the affordable housing now stands.
Thank you. Any other questions?
One more.
Caroline?
How was your experience with Summit? Were they good people to work with on the construction side?
Yeah, I mean, there's always some ups and downs, but generally they're super responsive, and town staff has a tight relationship with them. So it's been really collaborative.
Thank you. All right. Appreciate that. And if you want to send your slides over to Mark as well, just to get those sent out for folks, I think that's great. And I'll just share, we're talking right now with Town of Lyons, Boulder County in regards to our intergovernmental agreement, and really looking at some of those pieces that the mayor was talking about in regards to the town planning area. Somebody else mentioned that too in their conversation. So thanks for all the work.
We'll take you up on the tour. I'll be down.
Who else has some responses to the questions that were shared for this meeting? Sounds like Erie's ready. The question in the room is if a trustee wants to give that information, or you've got some stuff.
No.
As well.
MJ is our expert. She knows what she's talking about. Unlike others, both the mayor and I, speaking for the mayor, we will be quiet. We don't chat. We chat too much. We'll let the expert talk about it.
Absolutely.
Well, you overstate my qualifications as expert, and I just want to do a shout out to Longmont, because Molly has been amazing. As I've been new in this job, she has just been so incredibly helpful. Not just Molly, but your whole staff up there have been very helpful in me getting a lay of the land here in Colorado. I'm a recent transplant.
Thank you. I'll pass it along.
So Erie's been pretty busy. I've been in town since April, and since then we wrapped up. We did a housing needs assessment, which we completed in February, and are using that to move forward. It was the DOLA Innovative Housing Planning Grant that we received, and so we were able to do that. Out of that work, we just last week, thank you trustees, passed fast track permitting for the town of Erie that provides for a 25% density bonus for housing developments that come in with more than 12% of the housing units as affordable. We define affordable housing for the purposes of that that amendment to our Unified Development Code as housing, for sale housing that is less than 120% of the Boulder County AMI, and rental housing that is less than 80% of the Boulder County AMI. Erie is in both Weld County and Boulder County, so I've been trying to navigate those nuances, but we did identify Boulder County as the number that we would be using for our affordable housing numbers, largely because we're in that regional conversation about the city of Boulder staff providing administrative support to help us do compliance on that. So that's pretty exciting. My marching orders are now to get an inclusionary housing ordinance in the works. The town's been working on it for a couple of years, so we have a good draft, but moving it forward into being adopted by the community is high on my priority list. We are also working on, we have a metro district or a special district policy that says if you want a metro special district that you have to provide some level of affordability. So we're trying to figure out how to make that work with the developers who are obligated to do that. And that's been an interesting process. We are also, the community allocated I think most of their ARPA funds in support of affordable housing. So we've purchased a 2.3 acre parcel of land in the downtown area of Erie, did an RFQ for a developer and are starting to move forward, looking to build probably about 35 townhomes on this 2-acre site. That would be affordable for sale units. And we are in conversations with some other affordable housing developers with some other properties near the downtown and moving forward on that. So we did our Proposition 123 commitment letter at the end of June. One of the interesting things is trying to figure out what the state really means when you're counting units. And that's been, I think, a very interesting exercise for me and my colleagues. And then to figure out what compliance will look like to hit the 3% a year, just for measure. The tool that we used from the state, their baseline calculator, identifies 164 affordable units that exist in Erie right now. I know only 12 of them are 12 units of senior housing that we have. The other is naturally occurring using the census data. And so it's a learning process on how we're going to come up with that 3% and how we identify which those are and how they are included as we move forward to access the new resources that are becoming available through Proposition 123. So far, I'm excited about being here, and I'm really excited about the regional nature of this conversation because, as I say over and over again, you know, it's not a community's housing issue. It's a regional housing. We're a regional labor supply. We're a regional housing market. And clearly, you know, the city of Boulder and Longmont have really taken the leadership role over the many years in terms of doing something active to get this affordable housing built. And it's time for the smaller communities to start playing ball and to learn from the many experiences that the other communities have had. But I'm pretty excited to be in that place. And like I said, learning the ropes out here, but pretty excited and pretty optimistic. The 12% goal, I think people ask me about that. And I frequently say it's aspirational. It'll be a while before Erie hits that, but we have to start somewhere. And so that's where we are.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Are there any questions for Erie?
I was just going to ask my trustees and mayor if I missed anything.
No, you didn't, MJ. Thank you. You did an excellent job as always. I also appreciate that their examples. Thank you, Mayor Rogan, for sharing what you've done in Lyons. We talked to our residents and their folks who live in $1 million homes and are against the idea of having affordable housing in their area without necessarily understanding what demographic we're referring to. We're talking about working class people who have a place in our community but are commuting into it. And so I really appreciate that there are numerous examples of this construct working successfully around the region. And I also appreciate that there are various types of housing that we're able to make affordable at various levels and of various types, both rental and for sale properties. So sharing information in this way is really going to be useful for us to provide comparison for residents who question the viability of these efforts to be able to say, look, Lyons is a great town. They have it, and they're smaller than us, and they have a smaller budget, yet they're able to do it. So if they can do it, so can we. So I appreciate you leading from where you are.
I love hearing that, Mayor Brooks. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add to it that I think the biggest one of the biggest challenges I think we all experience, but definitely in our conversations around this subject within Erie is the communication side in terms of trying to really get that outreach to the town, trying to educate them on what we're trying to accomplish, what we're trying to do, what are the impacts. And then to the mayor's point of, when we talk about who this is for, unlike up there in Lyons, our AMI salary wise, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, again, MJ on this is around $95,000 to $140,000 a year. So that's the salary level that we're talking about down here in Erie, when the average price of a home in Erie is also $870,000. So I think there's a lot to overcome with that and to educate. Hopefully we can craft that message, but if there are any lessons learned from any of those experiences around within our region of the outreach that you've done, please share. We'd be more than happy to absorb that and share likewise to you as well.
MJ used the term called inclusive housing. What's that?
Inclusionary housing is an ordinance that a community might pass that says to any developer, if you're going to be building housing, a certain percentage of those units that you're building need to be affordable.
Any other questions for Erie? Great, thank you. Appreciate that. It looks like maybe Lafayette's ready.
Yes, thank you,
Everyone,
Commissioner.
thank you.
So, couple things that staff had provided me to share with the consortium, as far as affordable housing where we're at. The city recently adopted the Economic Development and Housing Strategy Plan. So as part of that, we're reevaluating our affordable housing fee and looking at an inclusionary housing ordinance. So those are going hand in hand. We're looking at that. ADUs, we are looking at expanding that to the entire community. Right now, it's just in Old Town, but in the next month, we'll be having that come before council to look at expanding our ADU requirements. And so what that would look like and how that could impact affordability. So that's coming forward. We have just finished our multimodal transportation plan, which we will then be looking at what corridors and what areas that we could then put some affordable housing on transportation corridors. So that's something that we're doing. We are currently rewriting our land use code to ensure that areas served by transit are thoughtfully designed and include mixed use and higher density housing. And then we are looking at a mobile home ordinance zoning district, just because I know we have the largest number of mobile homes, I think, in the county. So we're looking to protect that. And then obviously I know it's been mentioned before, but we just did the groundbreaking for Willoughby Corners. So we're really excited about that. Thank you to the county for your partnership. I know it was a lot to get us there, but we're really excited that that's moving forward. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the groundbreaking, but I know it was very well attended and our residents are really excited about that piece of it. So that's kind of what's going on in Lafayette.
Thank you. Thanks for that update. Any questions for Lafayette?
Yeah, so what great work. And I'm curious about the mobile home piece. We have one remaining mobile home park in Lyons, and it's currently for sale and it's currently zoned as 3 single family lots. So it's a legacy use. So can you talk a little bit about what you're doing to preserve the mobile home parks?
Yes, some of the initial ideas that they were looking at is requiring the landowner to, once they decided they would sell that, to offer the opportunity for the residents to look at forming a body to go ahead and purchase the mobile home. That's something that's actually being done at one of our smaller mobile home parks right now. And they're working in conjunction, I believe, with I think it's a national agency, and I can get more details on that, but they are working to try and secure it and maintain that as a mobile home park. So what was nice is the owner actually went to the city came to the city helped facilitate some of the conversations with the other owners, and they're in process of trying to raise funds to purchase that mobile home park. So there's that part of it. There's also what we would have, and as a mobile home park zoning district, what we would do in case that any if they wanted to change that designation, what that process would look like. So it's more of a regulation piece, and then also working with the owners should they ever decide to go ahead and sell their land. So, but I can get more information and send that to you. I think you're in a different situation if the mobile home park's already up for sale, because I know that's already a kind of, you're reacting to what may have already occurred, where we're trying to prevent that from happening. So, but I can certainly get information for you.
I sure appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, not a problem.
Any other questions for Lafayette? Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Do we have other jurisdictions that wanted to present or share? I see a hand up. Go ahead, Rachel.
Hey, everyone. So again, I'm Rachel King, and I'm the Deputy Director for Economic Vitality and Development with City and County of Broomfield. I am happy to run through a couple of our recent updates for housing. I don't have full notes ready. I wasn't aware that I was attending tonight's meeting until a few hours ago, so I apologize, but I'll try to be as thorough as possible. As far as recent activity, Broomfield's been extremely busy with housing. We updated our inclusionary housing ordinance in late 2022. We were trying to encourage more of a balanced approach with our developers to provide on-site units and cash in more of a 50-50 split. Our first iteration really ended up with developers providing the cash in lieu pretty much 9 times out of 10, no questions asked, just because it was so affordable for them to do so. So we've balanced that out now a little bit, and we're starting to see the fruits of that labor come in with some of our new proposals, which is exciting. We also finished a housing needs update this spring that we're getting ready to publish the final study on soon. And not surprisingly, it still shows us that we have a housing needs gap, but in a couple different ways. And so with our efforts moving forward, we're trying to address that really low subsidy and affordability, but also it shows a pretty significant gap in our market rate units. Obviously, we're not going to be investing a lot of resources to address that gap. It just gives us a lot of good data to work on other programming to support folks to move up in the housing continuum. This year, in anticipation of the tax or property tax increases that we'll see next year, we established and set up the structure for a partial property tax refund program. Ours in particular focuses on seniors at certain AMI levels, folks at a certain disability level. I think it's 80% disability, and then veterans with disability. So we had success with the program, marketing it, getting it off the ground, kind of working out the kinks and the bugs, so to speak, so that we can get that running full steam ahead next spring. So we had a good trial run with it this year. We had some folks still sign up. And then next year, of course, we expect to max out the program and the funding that we have available for that. We are also bringing to our council next Tuesday, actually, our proposal for the Proposition 123 commitment. We had a very helpful and just kind of open and honest conversation with DOLA that Broomfield is really going to struggle And in fact, it might be darn near impossible or truly impossible for us to meet the goal for the 3 and ultimately 9% over 3 years. They said, we hear you, but do it anyway. We don't, there's really no reason why you shouldn't. There's no penalty. You just won't get funding for that following year, but we're not going to take money back if awarded during those 3 years. So there's really no reason not to opt in. So we'll have a measure going through council this coming Tuesday to determine if we're going to opt in there. Again, as a result of that housing needs update, we're looking at some program expansions. So we are hopefully later this fall bringing forward to council a program to address down payment assistance for folks. And we're really hoping that, you know, part of the reason why we're seeing that large gap in stock for the market rate units on the rental side is because we're having so many folks get stuck at that point in their lives where they might be ready to purchase their first home. They just don't have the capital to do so. So we're trying to introduce a down payment assistance program. We're working out those details and we'll be proposing that to council again, hopefully later this year. And then we're also trying to focus on some assistance to help our rising older adult population, and just acknowledging that that population percentage in Broomfield is increasing, and costs are increasing dramatically, and they can't keep up with housing costs in proportion. So we're kind of racking our brains with the limited resources that we have. And given that true rental assistance is just so costly household to households, we're trying to come up with some more creative solutions that we can help that population stay in place, stay in Broomfield, and not become at risk for homelessness, truly. So those are some of the program expansions that we have. We're also continuing with some developments in partnership with a lot of community partners and affordable developers. Again, we have limited resources in Broomfield, so we can't offer a lot of gap financing to folks. We don't get a lot of grant funding to be able to do that. So oftentimes we'll come to the table with fee waivers or fee reductions, and we'll do everything we can to support that application if they're applying for LIHTC funding with CHAFA. But we haven't had too much success in recent years with the projects that have been applying to CHAFA for LIHTC in Broomfield. So I'd say that's one of the key challenges for us. It's just funding availability for programming, number one, but also just the availability of funds across the state is really limited, and the CHAFA applications are incredibly competitive. So we're not getting a lot of traction there for development. I think those are all of the highlights I had. I know Councilmember Schaaf is on the line, but he's in transit. So I'm happy to hear his thoughts if he happens to be in an area where he can chat, but otherwise I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Thanks for being here. And I don't see Councilmember Schaaf coming off of mute, which would just make me think he's probably not able to grab the phone, which is totally fine. Be safe. Questions for Broomfield? Go ahead, Councilmember Folkert.
You mentioned sort of reassessing your cash in lieu numbers to increase or to try and get more developers to build on-site affordable units. How is that program working right now? Like, what is your cash in lieu tied to like, is it a per unit amount? And if so, what did you change it from and to?
Yes, great question. And that was actually the focus of our analysis when we were preparing to update the ordinance. We actually commissioned a small study focused purely on the cash in lieu fees to really calibrate them appropriately with the market conditions and just make sure that we were setting them at a rate that made sense for Broomfield. And why I say that is because you can either, from a cash in lieu perspective, you can either ask developers to fork up the dollars for Broomfield to take that money and build the units elsewhere. So kind of a one-to-one match, right? Like the exact cost of the housing. Or you can ask them to provide the gap. What is the gap cost between the development of a market rate unit and an affordable unit? We felt in our analysis that the first approach was a little bit too aggressive at this time. So we opted with the second approach. So we calibrated the amount to more closely represent the gap that we're seeing in that market rate unit versus the affordable unit. Our cash in lieu fees previously were so low that the jump from the old number to the new number would have been more than sticker shock for a developer. We think it would have effectively ceased a lot of development activity in Broomfield altogether. So we actually implemented a 3-year phased approach to impose that new fee. The old fee, I would say, give or take $25,000 to $30,000 or so per unit on the rental side. And we are gradually ramping that up closer to $125,000 per unit plus. So we're getting there. At the end of the 3 years, we'll also add an annual adjustment for the CPIU index to make sure they're keeping on pace with market conditions. And it was just more of a, we thought, fair approach to say to developers, we appreciate all of your payments into the inclusionary housing program with the old fee structure, but it wasn't doing us much good. And like I said, 9 out of 10 folks, unless you had a really, really civic-minded developer and some other reason why they were providing units on site, we just wouldn't get the units. So we are getting very small pieces of cash in lieu here and there. The proposals that we're seeing now come from developers are often a hybrid approach, truthfully, because they want to try to buy down their cash in lieu obligation. So they're providing, half of the units on site at certain AMIs, or they're providing a mix of AMIs as an alternate satisfaction. So we're starting to be able to get creative with the developers, and we feel like we're getting a little bit more mix in that housing stock and a better diversification.
Thank you. I was also wondering about the down payment assistance program that you're looking at, and if at this point you plan to have deed restrictions associated with that, or if that's more of like a one-time assistance just to get people into the position of ownership.
The way that we're truthfully still researching all the different angles that we can approach it at, but initially we're thinking that the program would be focused on supporting the homeowner just with that first step, being able to get into the unit. We do think that what might naturally occur is that these folks would be applying for the units that are restricted through our inclusionary housing program. So we do have some stock coming online from that program for the for sale product. Again, I think some others have mentioned it on this call, Broomfield is the same. Our market rate, for a for sale unit is likely going to be out of reach for someone at 80, 90, even 100% AMI on their own, unless they come in with a significant down payment, which is very difficult to do. So we feel that more times than not, they're probably going to be pursuing that inventory, which is restricted already. The method in my prior role with another city and county, we operated a down payment assistance program through a community partner. And with that, it's really through a deferred low interest repayable loan, and essentially works as a soft second on the house.
Thank you for that. Yeah, in Boulder, we're facing the same problem of getting people into market rate ownership units is just such a difficult issue to find answers for. So I was just curious. Thank you for that. And then my last question was if you could provide a link to your housing assessment, needs assessment that you did, maybe in a follow-up email, that I would be just really interested in seeing what you guys found there.
Of course, we'd be happy to.
Great, thank you. Trustee Harrison, I saw you had your hand up, and so I didn't want to miss you if you still had it.
Yeah, the question mentioned before regarding the down payment assistance was trying to figure out what that strategy or how you're assessing that, and that's ongoing. The other thing is the assistance to help rising older adult population that's increasing. Can you talk more about that in terms of percentage or numbers of what do you see as how much has that increased percentage wise year over year, if you have any data on that? Because I think in Dr. Cog, we talked about the fact that I think we had a presentation a number of months ago where we talked about how the fact that what's really growing in our population is the aging population for people that look like me, 50 and over. And really the population for the younger is either staying consistently low or flatlining because they're not having children, or most likely may not be having children. So I think that's something for all of our communities to kind of think about, is that full circle approach of A, how do you get somebody into a home that's affordable? And B, on the outside, for those maybe who are older who want to downsize to another home, if that's even possible, making that home available for a family or somebody else that can come in there and then take over for something that's smaller, just kind of a holistic approach. But do you have percentages in terms of what you're seeing in Broomfield?
We do. It was actually one of the key takeaways that we saw in our updated housing needs study this spring, the exact trend that you mentioned regarding an increase in the older adult population and a decreasing trend in families with children and younger adults. So we, I don't have the numbers right in front of me. So I'm happy to send those out. I want to say, we were getting closer to 15% of the population being older adults, and it was about, I think of maybe a 5%, 10% delta over the past 5 years. So I'm, don't quote me on that. I don't have it right in front of me for tonight, but I'm happy to send that out with the materials. But it's exactly what you referenced, and that's the trend we're seeing, and that's the concern that we have is ultimately a lot of our programming right now with our limited resources, we're just focused on with the housing climate the way it is, just prevention, right? Making sure that people don't become at risk of homelessness, making sure that people can stay, making sure that there are downsizing opportunities for families where that's appropriate, and upsizing opportunities for other families. So prevention is, and housing stability is our focus area with those limited resources. And so with the senior rental assistance, because like I said earlier, we offered up this partial property tax relief program for senior homeowners, but for the rental population, rent assistance is just so expensive. cost per household, that we don't have any funding, direct funding available for that right now. So what are some of the other ways that we can really address that issue of prevention? Home share, for example, has been a popular model in some of the other larger jurisdictions, Denver, Aurora, but we don't know if we would have quite the population in Broomfield that would utilize that. We're looking at some other work that other regional community partners are doing. Dr. Cog's Council on Aging, Senior Resource Board, just kind of putting our heads together to see what package of resources we can provide that population to make sure that we're minimizing the risk as much as possible.
Yeah, and I think maybe one subject of that that probably needs to be looked at and communicated is what population we're talking about. I think for how much everything has increased in the Front Range, people who may be in a home or what have you, or maybe one paycheck away or one job loss away from being homeless. And I think that's the thing that we kind of have to get across is it's no longer what people have a stereotype for. It's people like us that for whatever reason, we could possibly lose our job in an industry that's falling apart or rapidly changing. And all of a sudden we find ourselves in the same situation. We can't make those payments. So I think that has to be for sort of, I guess, it needs to be talked about more so that people hear, because I think people are just putting it in the back of their mind. But if we don't talk about it, we don't have to start having those conversations that it could be that without alarming them, but hey, this is something we have to look at now because it's impacting people that are at a salary level a lot higher than what we normally had been used to in the past.
We fully agree, and that's why right now, again, with the limited resources that we have, that we're putting almost all of our eggs into the housing stability priority. That ultimately we're just trying to help everybody weather the storm right now as much as possible until we get to a better environment.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Trustee Harrison, Mark Rosen here, Boulder County. I do have some numbers from the State Demography Office in the growth of the older adult population in Boulder County. And actually, this is growth in the 80+ population. Just over 11,000 members of the 80+ population in Boulder County in 2021. And by 2050, that number will grow to 38,000. So significant growth in the numbers. And in addition to the housing need, home-based care, community-based services, we're going to see dramatic increases in the need for those kinds of services to go along with the growth in the population. So there's a lot to that in addition to the housing side.
Right. And obviously the nut to crack is if you're having low growth in terms of population at the younger group, you don't have the taxing population to be able to pay for those services, or you have to tax more or come up with something more creative to try to help fund those kind of things that we're talking about. And my folks are in their 80s. They're lucky, but I can see it being a problem for a lot of our parents with that. And especially in the Front Range, my wife and I had this conversation. It's like, well, if you want to downsize, what do you downsize to? Because those homes are not that dramatically cheaper for a 2 or 3 bedroom than what you're currently in now. And so I think that's the big challenge that also we have to overcome. So thank you. I think that's just those demographics need to be, and those numbers really need to be published and communicated a lot more.
Thank you. Councilmember McCoy.
To piggyback along with what Trustee Harris was talking about, the other side of the coin is this: we're noticing that that a lot of the newer developments might be perfect for seniors but none of them have anything like that seniors need, like mini elevators or dumb waiters to carry things to the next floor. You know, they can get up the stairs slowly, but it's be nice to get the groceries up out of the garage. And they could live in a multi-story unit and other things like that, but they can't do that if there isn't some sort of thing there. I mean, we all can put in one of those stair elements, but that's not really what I think what needs to happen. I think there needs to be many elevators or dumb waiters that allow people to get some of the heavier items up to the next levels, and that way we do have multi-generational folks living in some of these new developments that are not just specifically senior developments or anything like that, because I think that builds a community when you have older members with younger members, and then they have those relationships, and they see that, you know, that people, they're you know, young people, children see people their grandparents' age, you know, interacting in the community, and I think it's healthy. And so I think those are some of the things that we need to start addressing in some of our building codes as we look at some of these projects.
I'm going to put my architect hat on for just a second. Typically, the International Building Code would require any multi-story, multi-unit building to have an elevator, and for any non-ground floor unit to be elevator served. So unless there's a specific exemption in your community that you've created to that rule, that should be an automatic requirement.
I'm just seeing a lot of walk-ups. So it's probably something we need to look into a little bit more in depth as we start to build higher units beyond a 3-level home, but more like on the 4, 5, and 6 levels, where you have maybe parking down below and that type of thing.
Great. Thank you. And I'm taking a quick look at the clock. This is fantastic conversation, but I do want to make sure somebody, and the person who said we're going to struggle with our agendas it would agree. Were there any other jurisdictions? I'm happy to just talk really briefly about what we're doing at the county. And I see a hand up, I think. Superior.
Yes, this is Sandy Hammerly. I don't want to take up a lot of time. Needless to say, you know, Superior's been dealing with a few other things. But I did want to let the group know that we have received a DOLA grant to get a consulting firm to work on an affordable housing strategic plan for Superior. We are hoping to kick that off. We've hired the consultant, hope to kick it off in September. And then the other piece that I just kind of wanted to add in there, we did pass in 2020 an inclusionary housing ordinance that requires 15% of all new residential units by a builder to be restricted to those at 80% AMI. We haven't had a lot of, obviously, applications. We have limited space, but we were encouraged because we had a developer come in, talk to us about a concept plan within the last month and a half, and they did embrace the 15% of the 80% AMI units, which if they move forward with a formal plan, that could add anywhere from 30 to 45 units in the town of Superior, which is encouraging for us. The other piece that, you know, I was really encouraged by some of the things that Lions is doing. They're doing big things on a small scale, which is, you know, sort of the way Superior has to do things, is on a small scale. We're a little town. And it would really be helpful for me to be able to communicate with, you know, we have 5 brand new board members. we only had 2 carryover from our last Board of Trustees. And if we could get more sort of imprint shared examples of great things like Lions did, because I'm just sitting there going, I love the plan of the lot 317 Evans and what you had accomplished there. And, you know, we do have some lots in particularly Original Town, which, you know, we lost so much of, where we have developers or owners that might be amenable to something like that if we knew more about how you accomplish that. And I actually am like, okay, we got to talk to Lions about this, because I know there's a particular owner who, you know, this might be a possibility for his lots. And so, you know, we are committed to move forward. We just might not be moving forward as fast as others, you know, because I will be honest, our board is very, very focused right now on getting the 10% of our community who lost their homes back in their homes. But I loved what I heard from Lions, and I think there's some great examples there.
Yeah, Sandy, I'll put my email in the chat and feel free to reach out. I'm totally happy to talk to you. You know, we're finishing our 10 years of recovery, so we feel your pain there. So I'll put my email in the chat.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
I was just going to do Netherland, and I can be really quick here. So Netherland's primarily focusing on its housing needs assessment. We too are contract with Bohannon Houston, reaching kind of the final stage. We did a really robust public engagement strategy and had the highest number of survey respondents than we ever have. And that's 250, which doesn't sound incredible, but it is for Netherland, when our highest before that was 100. So tons of great feedback. Some preliminary review of how we could change code is really focused around increased density, fee reductions where we can, a lot of similar things to Lions. Administrative variances, most of the infill, if we were going to do infills on non-conforming lots. And so to tie someone up through the Board of Zoning adjustment, if it's just slightly smaller than lot size, seems like a big barrier. So that's a staff recommendation. Also going to work on a rate study for our water and sewer rates, for also our plant investment fees with an affordability component. We've never really looked at those from an affordability side. Board of Trustees just finalized their annexation ordinance. So obviously, in addition to infill, seeing if there are parcels on the outskirts of town. What it does is it allows us to start to evaluate applications. However, it did just pass an ordinance that if it's over 10 acres, it requires an election, or if the zoning is going to be different than what the neighboring parcels are, would also trigger an automatic election. And then we actually have seen a huge uptick in our short-term rentals. Back in 2019, we had implemented some what we thought were strict requirements for short-term rental, saw a huge decrease from 104 to about 30, but we're back up to almost 70 because people have found loopholes. And so really looking at how do we tighten those up to kind of bring it back down to a manageable level. So that's really the work Netherlands doing.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Netherland? All right. Great, thank you. Did I miss any other jurisdictions that may have joined us? Okay. I think what I want to do is just really briefly, Bill shared about from the county side about what we're working on the goals, but I did want to share with this group in just two pieces. One, the regional housing partnership was formed initially through conversations at the Consortium of Cities years ago. And so I think it's really important and really appreciate our Housing and Human Services folks for prepping some information and just being here. I'm very interested in hearing from you, Bill, capacity that the Regional Housing Partnership has right now to potentially, I heard a few asks of data and information from members of the consortium. And so I want to ask you first, of course, it's completely on the spot and recorded, but what capacity might your group have to bring some of this data that I felt like I heard would be really helpful for folks making decisions around housing? That's my first question.
That is a very good question, and that is something that we've been talking about and struggling with since I came on board. Is that, where's the data? I know that back in 2017, 18, 19, before the pandemic, there was some work done on data across the county, and that kind of tailed off, and something that I need to get back to and refocus on. I mean, Boulder and Longmont have really good data about their deed restricted properties. And Boulder County has, I think, 28 deed restricted properties that we're aware of in unincorporated Boulder County. But there's a lot of naturally occurring affordable housing, and much of that's in the mobile home parks. And that's really, we want to also get more data. We are getting more data on the mobile home parks. So that is something that I need to focus on. We need to focus on the capacity. I mean, we need to work with our IT folks, but we really haven't started working on that as of yet. But there is a huge need to have better data for sure.
And some of it, to me, what I heard was just information about some of these questions and some of the topics people were sharing about, for example, ADU processes are around all of our jurisdictions. Where are people at with those? Data for sure, and just being able to compare, like, where are folks? And maybe it's a, convening similar to what we do with our transportation plan update, to have a convening with regional housing plan and hear from folks. But I would love to hear and maybe it's just a wave of a hand if folks feel like having some information or data brought by the regional housing plan, so that we have a better idea of where we all are consistently, if that would be helpful. And or if folks want to follow up with me in regards to specifics, asks that you might have that we could share with this group and maybe compile a list together to take back to the regional housing plan. So I think the first question for folks participating, if you could just raise your hand if you would be interested in seeing how regional housing plan could provide some information or data that would help us all as decision makers in regard to housing needs. And I see 3 online. Mayor, are you trying to get a double count there? And yeah, so we've got a majority of folks. Thanks everybody for participating. And so I think what I'm happy to help kind of be the funnel of, if that's okay, Mark, I'm looking at stuff. Is that okay? If folks have specific needs based on the conversation that we heard tonight, of information that you would like to hear about from a regional perspective, so that we can then go back to regional housing partnership and ask. And I'll be cognizant of the capacity, and I also am cognizant of the need and our role as the county, as a larger institution with more staff, to how can we provide information that would be helpful? Go ahead, Councilmember.
Well, and I think that one of the things that this conversation has brought up for me, both this time and we've had it before, is like that we don't all have the same, like different things are easier or more difficult for different communities. Land values in Boulder are extremely high, but we also have more staff capacity, or, like just how can we all share in a way that allows us to do the thing that we can do best and sort of help our communities the most, but also help each other by doing that thing that we do best, if that makes sense. And so I feel like collecting that information could help us start to figure out better how we all work together to achieve the most.
Thank you. That was one question. And then the second question I had that I heard, I was trying to listen kind of for some themes around, and we'll then move us really, I think, into, if folks are okay, I feel like we might want to skip number 3, because a lot of folks talked about Prop 123 in certain ways, and just move us into the state legislation. So, and what I want to share from the county side is we are in conversation right now, and I was looking on my calendar but didn't find it quickly enough. In the next couple of weeks, we have a public hearing in regards to ballot measures. We are looking at, for those of you who aren't aware, the alternative sentencing facility tax that does exist currently, about asking voters to use a portion of that funding for housing. And so when I'm in this conversation, this is really helpful for me, because what I continually am hearing is we don't have the funding, and we need to be able to leverage funding, and where are the opportunities with funding. And so be really interested in just feedback from this group who is sharing concerns about how to get to affordable housing. I heard some questions around how to get to denser housing, et cetera, and what funding might be able to do and help. So if there's anybody that has a quick reaction, great. And if not, if you want to email me and we can have a conversation and move into item 4 as well. I'll put my email in the in the chat. So just by ways of kind of a heads up on some of the pieces that we're talking about, because we believe, based on what we've heard from residents, what the polling has showed, that housing is critical, and y'all have given some really specific pieces about how housing funding is still a priority and a need. So thank you. So let's move. We're going to just skip our break. I hate to do that, but we are going to be out of here by 8:30. So we've just ran right through it. So number 4 was 2024 state legislation. And also we'll be participating in the county commissioners acting together CCAT retreat tomorrow and Friday. And so if there's legislative ideas that folks are having, please feel free to reach out to me in the next couple of days as well. I'm happy to carry that water. So Mark, were you going to go through this one, or was there somebody else that was teed up?
Thank you. No, the thought was really just to perhaps have a brainstorm conversation about anything that your communities are thinking about in respect to state legislation in this space. It was a major priority of the administration and ran into some typical and some atypical challenges in the General Assembly. And we know some proposals will be back next year. And the thought was to try to just surface some ideas that this group may want to proactively advocate for, or perhaps there are some strategies that the communities in the consortium would not support. And maybe there's a way for that information to inform conversations that are happening now. For example, we know that the Colorado Municipal League is going to propose its own package of affordable housing or housing legislation, and rather than just be reactive to what comes from, in essence, the administration. So perhaps there are opportunities for the municipalities to contribute to that process that CML is running and get some of your ideas included there. So that was really just the thought, and this could be done. All of these conversations are happening and will be happening for many months moving forward. So we don't necessarily need to take a lot of time on it this evening. We can certainly be in touch with your staff and others and collect ideas over the next several weeks and months. And as we do our advocacy at the county level, and as you all are working through CML and other organizations to contribute to the conversation.
Thank you. I saw a few hands go up. I think I got them in order. Councilmember McCoy, and then Mayor Rogan.
Okay, thank you. As a home rule city, Longmont is really going to be concerned about how the governor kind of approached this SB 23-213. I think we're going to be working closely with CML, and we encourage other communities to as well. I just think that that's really the way to go about this. I understand that there are probably some communities, maybe some mountain towns and ski areas that have some real problems with this and have for literally decades, and probably haven't done enough about fixing those problems. But I feel like Longmont, and I look around at, because I'm a teacher in Louisville and Lafayette, that they're doing their part and they're doing the best they can to address affordable and attainable housing and workforce housing. And I think the big issue is around that defects issue, so that people can start establishing home ownership. And so when I was on council the first time, we had a council that the second half of my term that was actively, trying to reduce the number of inspectors. Well, that goes to, why we, can't, make sure everything is working right, and then why defects are such a big deal. If you're actively trying to reduce government oversight, and so that's a problem. And we thank God have gotten past that, but it's still an issue with just the ability to hire quality employees and retain them in every community, as we all know. But that's something I think that we really need to leave for CML to help bring the best aspects of all these ideas around affordable and attainable housing and together and put them into one nice, neat piece of legislation for them to kind of follow along with.
Thank you. Trustee Harrison.
Thank you. I echo what Sean has said. I think the other things that are there, number one, at the very beginning, and I think this is where CML, Dr. Cog, maybe even the mayor's conference, what have you, can have more of an input in is we have to develop trust again. That's the first thing that has to happen. We have to have a common set goal baseline of what the problem is, and that we all agree on, and understand that each community has different demographics, different people, and different solutions to reflect their own community from a local control perspective, identify that, hey, there are communities that have the ability to, say, bring on an affordable housing manager, or might be able to have a contract with a consultant, but there are other communities that don't. And so I think what we need to do is we need to ensure that they're not left out of the equation, because that's just a weak link, and you're never going to have a strong chain for everything. There's going to be a break. And it's just going to fall apart. And so I think we need to work on communication. We need to develop the foundation, just like building a house. I'll equate it to that. We need to ensure that those pillars are there, that we can start from to build everything that we need to do from there. So if CML can work with that, and Dr. Cog and others, and even with our own communities, our own city councils and trustees, and so board of trustees, et cetera, whatever voice we can do, we need to have that discussion first. And then second, come around and share around it really strategically about how we can give the ability, share the information, number one, that is common for every community, that we can come around and agree on as well, and say, okay, these are the big things that we need to work on. The how to do that goes to the local control and what tools that each community has available. And so that's the other thing, is what's the funding mechanism for those communities that are not, say Boulder or Erie or around here, or, obviously with up in Lyons. I think that's the thing, is how can we make sure that they have a funding mechanism to either leverage the lessons that other communities are able to get, and that knowledge that comes together. And so I think those are the core things that we really have to have a discussion about before we ever get to what that end goal is, and reset expectations in regard to that. My hope is that that all parties would be open to that and leave the politics at the door. I'm a solutions-oriented person. That's that's just one approach. But I think that's one where we have to figure that out. Otherwise, we are going to just be right back where we were a couple of months ago. So that's my piece.
Thank you. Mayor Rogan.
Thank you. I wholeheartedly agree with Trustee Harrison. And, I think, Mark, I think the last time I saw you was actually at that bananas testimony day down at the State House. So, there are about 165 statutory towns in the state, and we, I think we're left out of the equation a lot. So we, as Trustee Harrison was saying, there are a lot of towns without the funding. We can't take an unfunded mandate. It's impossible. We would have to take money from capital improvement projects. It's untenable. And I think preempting local control is going to be a no-go entirely. So I agree, we need to rebuild some trust. I hope that we can. And I just was extremely nervous when SB 213 was coming along. And one reason was that what it was looking like was Lyons would be the only municipality in the area to retain single family zoning. And if that were to be the case, what would happen to our housing costs and property values? So there's an interconnectedness that I think people really need to pay attention to when we're crafting this new legislation. And I hope to hear from CML very soon about what towns like ours can input into the process.
Thank you. Others?
Hi, this is Bill. I had, and one of the bullets is what worries you about some of the state legislation. And we spent a lot of time on 213 at the county level looking at this. And I just wanted to share some of my particular concerns from my point of view. First of all, there were not enough affordability requirements. They really didn't address affordability. Their approach was build more housing and it will happen. But they also said up front that the gap in Colorado, or the housing need, was 65,000 to 90,000 units in the state just to meet the current need. And until you fill that need, there is no place for affordability without some requirements. And I think that's really important to think about. And then the other thing was it really focuses on infill, which makes a lot of sense. But if you look at what happened in Portland, Oregon, they did the same thing and all the property values just went through the roof and they really weren't able to do affordable housing because the property then cost so much. So it's just some concerns that I have about what they had in 213.
Thank you. That's helpful. We're on number 4. Any one of those points, whichever one is getting you more emotionally reactive.
I guess to represent one of the few municipalities that was in support of SB 213, we felt like we shared some of our concerns with the specifics of that, and they were taken into consideration and modifications were made. So, Boulder found that, or our council found that by the end, it was something that we fully supported. Odd people out.
Thank you. And I'll just share, as one person on our board, I was in support of pieces of 213 in the sense I really do believe that we're in a housing crisis. I have just coming from 24 years in the real estate industry on all levels of that work. We've been in a crisis for a while. We saw it coming. We saw property values rising, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't believe that local governments have been able to yet demonstrate the political will to respond to a housing crisis. And so I get all of the reasons why folks didn't, and I hear the local control and I hear that. And I also feel like we need to, so I think the follow-up conversation I would love to have with folks is, what do we do? And I love that piece, and maybe it was Trustee Harrison, like what can we agree on? I feel like there was a lot of energy in both Metro area county commissioners and the county commissioners acting together, conversations, because so much work was put into that. But a lot of it was just the angst of what would this mean, et cetera. And I really would love to see us come together and with solutions. And even if it's just a couple pieces of whether it's rezoning or it's ADU or it's, whatever the ones that we can agree on, because I do believe that this group and specifically also agrees that we have a crisis And that we need to come up with some solutions that we haven't tried before. I'm personally not, I don't go straight towards down payment assistance just because, again, I have an industry background and that's inventory's the issue in my mind, but that's just me as one person. So just appreciate the conversation and the interest of moving us forward with all of these different organizations. And if we could come up with a regional agreement on how we're going to help form some of these bills and get legislators to support, I think could be really effective versus waiting for folks to come to us and say, here's what we're going to do. And do you agree? I think this is the time for us to be more involved in that creation. So just really appreciate everybody's involvement and interest. Rachel.
Thanks. I will add that while I was on kind of the response team, if you will, for Brimfield's 213 analysis during session, I'm positive that Brimfield will want to be involved in those discussions and would be happy to brainstorm further for what the next iteration looks like for the 2024 season. And Danae Brouillard, who I think is the more typical attendee of this meeting for Brimfield, has continued to work on it. And I'm sure she has some more fleshed out ideas than what I can speak to tonight, but just wanted to add in that Brimfield would be more than willing to be at the table for that.
Thank you. We'll take one more comment on this so that we can at least get to a portion of the regional minimum wage update as well. Trustee Harrison.
Yeah, just one quick question, and that was, and maybe for another time, but what does everybody feel about, again, the Gallagher Amendment being repealed, no real solution or replacement for that come into play to deal with property values, and then what the governor has proposed? Has anybody had any conversation about that side of it in regard to the impact of that on affordable housing?
Anyone that has had a conversation to that point, please share now.
Yeah, because I think that's a vital piece that's kind of missing, that needs to be discussed. Not here, but obviously at a higher level, that needs to be in conversation with this whole affordable housing piece of it.
Thank you. It's going in the notes I can see from here. All right. Thanks everybody for that conversation. It's critical for our communities. So Councilmember Fulker, first of all, I have to apologize because you texted me yesterday to have a quick conversation before this meeting and I did not get back to you. But we have a few minutes here for just an update.
Yeah. So Taylor and I have gone to a number of councils now: Boulder, Longmont, Louisville, and Lafayette. And we have heard support from those councils to sort of move forward with the next steps of forming a working group and scoping and engagement and starting to look at bringing in data analysis so that we can start that process moving forward. All of those groups supported taking a sort of longer look and having moving towards the goal of implementation in January 1st, 2025. Taylor has maybe a little bit more to share on sort of the staff side of what's going on with that.
Hi everyone. Taylor Ryman, Assistant City Council, City of Boulder. We are well underway with convening those scoping teams, just scheduled the kickoff meetings for both. So to remind folks, next steps in this process include developing scopes of work for an economic analysis and also community engagement models that could be implemented in respective communities and sort of generate apples to apples data. So those scoping teams include staff representatives from the 4 communities: City of Boulder, Lafayette, Louisville, Longmont, as well as members of chambers of commerce. I've talked to Boulder Chamber, Longmont Chamber, and the Latino Chamber about their participation in those teams, as well as representatives from EFA, King Soopers, Labor Union. My computer died, so I don't have my notes in front of me. Faith-based community, New Era, Colorado, and a couple others. But I do believe that these are teams that are well represented. These are people that are coming in able to bring a lot of different perspectives to the table. We are just talking about scoping the work, of course. Implementation will be another thing, but I'm excited to get that work underneath us.
And I forgot to mention that we still have our meeting with Erie City Board of Trustees coming up, which we're looking forward to.
Councilmember McCoy.
Thank you. A couple of things have happened on this. Obviously, Taylor and Lauren have come to our council, and I went to this last chamber after hours meeting and spoke with just general members and asked their opinion on this. Of course, the Longmont Chamber of Commerce, the Executive Council is discussing it and thinking about what this looks like. And then we have a couple of city interns that are collecting data on the specific question with the guidance of Sandy Cedar, our assistant city manager. So we're trying to get some data from our small business owners and regular sized business owners and about what this what their thoughts are on this. So we're trying to get some feedback from them. So
Thank you for adding
that's
that.
where we're at with that. Is there a question?
Test. Okay. Sorry, Representative McCoy, I missed the orientation on how the technology works. I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah. So I forgot to mention that Longmont and Boulder both have a set of interns that are working on different aspects of this too. So we're also bringing youth voices in early on the process. But Longmont has been a fantastic partner. I've had early conversations also with CU Boulder about sort of the economic analysis side of things. They've done work across the county before. The CU is interested in being a part of our conversations and a part of the review process regarding economic analysis and things like that. But we will probably have to third party it and not utilize our partners at CU.
Great, thank you. Thanks for the update. I'm looking at the clock, and so I do have go ahead.
Did you want to mention anything about at least the county timeline, perhaps?
Yeah, that's where I was going, and now I feel like I was late, and now we're going late. So I'm gonna be that person today. So just by way of update, and so this is, and again, Councilmember Holkert's reached out to me, and I just hadn't gotten a chance to have a conversation. The county commissioners are interested in moving this forward for January 2024. And so I'm just going to share some of that conversation and reasoning. And also that was an update to know that there's 4 different councils that are really looking at 25, which is fine. And it's a good update. What we have been talking about is it seems like, and again, I haven't been part of these conversations when they were going on in 2019. But I know that there were some conversations that were had already previously. I've heard from folks who are looking at, what might there be a fix to the current legislation that would provide some kind of off-ramp that would address some of the concerns that small businesses have in regards to tipping and or certain ages. And what we've been also discussing is we have communities in crisis in a lot of different ways, not just about recovering from COVID and not just about inflation, not just about property tax potential rise, there's a whole list of myriad of different issues that folks are are facing, including the cost of housing and being able to live and work in your own community. And so whatever amount of engagement that we do, whatever amount of outreach or education that we do, statutorily, there's a very minimal requirement. Will we be in a different place? Will our community members be in a different place when the ARPA funding starts going away, when ERAP money has already gone away, when we have more than a $250 million cliff of ARPA funding right now in our 7-county region? Will we be in a better place from the amount of residents that are affected right now by not having a livable wage than we would be a year from now? And I say a year from now, knowing that it's basically a December, but there's this whole timeline and all the different pieces that have to happen before a January 1 change could be. So I'm just going to share that conversation, but that was where we came together thinking, actually, we probably could go through the same process right now in the next 4 months or so and be able to make a potentially life transformative change for a wage for somebody, knowing that we get to create that policy, and there's different ways statutorily. We don't have to go up to the full cap every year. We could do, there's so many different variations. And we aren't going to have time to have a full-on conversation. And Councilmember Folkerts is leading that work, and Commissioner Levy in the Boulder County Commissioner's Office is now the lead as of the beginning of this year on this work. So but just want to share an update in regards to the conversation that commissioners are having, and the concern that as a board, as a collective, which I think we all knew this was going to happen at some point, all the boards are going to have to make their decisions together about whether timeframe and what y'all want to do, et cetera. The constant that I am hearing is that folks want to do a regional approach. And so I think that's still a part of the conversation. So I just wanted to give that update. And I just appreciate the work that y'all are doing and the planning, certainly from all the staff that are trying to figure out and the interns that are trying to figure out. But I want to be really careful about what are we asking folks? Are the questions that we're asking people in this different types of outreach really what's going to inform our decision as decision makers? And if not, do we need to really look at what those questions are? Is it about a number? Is it about how comfortable you are as a business owner? Because people are going to get hurt. People will be hurt in this process. People are going to be hurt right now because they don't have a livable wage. Small businesses may have to close at some point, depending on, there is going to be enough, and that is the tough job of us as elected officials. Because none of us, I don't believe any of us want to see our small businesses hurt. And I believe that we don't want to see our residents hurt by not being able to live and work on one salary or one job in our own communities. So I'll give up the mic.
That was worth the extra time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, go ahead.
I'll just add for everyone, you will start to see information from the county coming out to the community the week of August 14th. So we'll have more information to share then through a press release and then subsequent communications out to the community. So we're still a couple of weeks away from making an announcement, but it will happen soon.
Thank you. All right. Well, I appreciate everybody's work. I would suggest using those emails to share on different events. I will share that I will be visiting Town of Lyons. So we'll send that information out for folks if anybody else wants to join us for one of the live music, and now looks like a tour of Summit's development. So thank you, everybody. Councilmember McCoy.
Boulder County Fair Parade on Saturday.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Oh, yes, thank you.
We'll be there too.
We'll be there too.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a great night. And thanks again, Madeline, for the hospitality. Mark.